A big shout out to Ed Brown for suggesting this video. Marvin Lee Aday, better known by his stage name Meatloaf, was born in Dallas, Texas on September 27, 1947, the only child of Wilma Artie Huckle, a school teacher, and Ovis Wesley Aday, a former police officer who went into business selling a homemade cough remedy with his wife and a friend under the name of the Griffin Grocery Company. Meatloaf stated in an interview that when he was born, he was bright red and stayed that way for days, and that his father said he looked like 9 pounds of ground chuck, and convinced hospital staff to put the name Meat on his crib. He was later called ML in reference to his initials, but when his weight increased, his 7th grade classmates referred to him as Meatloaf. Now moving to Los Angeles, Aday formed his first band, Meatloaf Soul. The band received several recording contracts. Meatloaf Soul's first gig was in Huntington Beach, California in 1968 at The Cave. Opening for Van Morrison's band, Meatloaf later defined his early days in the music industry as being treated like a circus clown. The band then underwent several changes of lead guitarist, changing the name of the band each time to names including Popcorn Blizzard and Floating Circus. As Floating Circus, they opened for The Who, The Stooges, MC5, Grateful Dead, and the Grease Band. The regional success led them to release a single, Once Upon a Time, backed with Hello. Meatloaf then joined the Los Angeles production of the musical Hair. With the publicity generated from Hair, Meatloaf accepted an invitation by Motown in Detroit to record only the vocals with fellow Hair performer Sean Stoney Murphy on an album of songs written and selected by the Motown production team. The album, titled Stoney and Meatloaf, was released in September 1971 and included the single What You See Is What You Get, and reached number 36 on the best-selling soul singles chart and number 71 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. In late 1973, Meatloaf was cast in the original L.A. Roxy cast of the Rocky Horror Show, playing parts of Eddie and Dr. Everett Scott. The success of the musical led to the filming of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, in which Meatloaf played only Eddie, a decision he said made the movie not as good as the musical. About the same time, Meatloaf and Steinman started working on Bad Out of Hell. Meatloaf convinced Epic Records to shoot music videos for 4 songs: Bad Out of Hell, Paradise by the Dashboard Lights, You Took the Words Right Out of My Mouth, and 2 out of 3 Ain't Bad, and convinced Lou Adler, the producer of Rocky Horror, to run the Paradise video as a trailer to the movie. Meatloaf and Steinman started working on Bad Out of Hell in 1972, but didn't get serious about it until the end of 1974. Meatloaf then decided to leave theater and concentrate exclusively on music. Meatloaf and Steinman spent time seeking a record deal. However, their approach were rejected by each record company because their songs did not fit any specific recognized music industry style. But they still had no takers until Steve Popovich, Cleveland International Records, took a chance, releasing Bad Out of Hell in October of 1977. Meatloaf and Steinman formed the band Neverland Express to tour in support of Bad Out of Hell. Their first gig was opening for Cheap Trick in Chicago. Meatloaf gained national exposure as the musical guest on Saturday Night Live on March 25, 1978. Bad Out of Hell had sold an estimated 43 million copies globally, including 15 million in the United States, making it one of the best-selling albums of all time. In 1979, Steinman started to work on Bad for Good, the intended follow-up to 1977's Bad Out of Hell. During that time, a combination of touring, drugs, and exhaustion had caused Meatloaf to lose his voice. Without a singer and pressured by the record company, Steinman decided that he would sing on Bad for Good himself and write a new album for Meatloaf. The result was Dead Ringer, which was released on September 1981. On December 5, 1981, Meatloaf and the Neverland Express were the musical guests for Saturday Night Live, where he and former fellow Rocky Horror Picture Show actor Tim Curry performed a skit depicting a one-stop Rocky Horror Shop. Also on the show, Curry performed the Zucchini Song, and Meatloaf and the Neverland Express performed Bat Out of Hell and Promised Land. Now, poor money management as well as 45 lawsuits totaling $80 million, including ones from Steinman, resulted in Meatloaf filing for personal bankruptcy in 1983. The bankruptcy resulted in Meatloaf losing the rights to his songs, although he received royalties for Bat Out of Hell in 1997. In 1984, Meatloaf went to England, where he felt increasingly at home, to record the album Bad Attitude. It was released that year. In 1985, Meatloaf took part in some comedy sketches in the UK with Hugh Laurie. Meatloaf also tried stand-up comedy, appearing several times in Connecticut. Following the success of Meatloaf's touring in the 1980s, he and Steinman began working during December 1990 on Bat Out of Hell 2, Back into Hell, which was released in September 1993. The immediate success of Bat Out of Hell 2 led to the sale of over 15 million copies, and the single I'd Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That reached number 1 in 28 countries. In March 1994, at the 36th Annual Grammy Awards, Meatloaf won the Grammy Award for Best Rock Vocal Performance Solo for I'd Do Anything for Love. This song stayed at number 1 in the UK chart for 7 consecutive weeks. In 1995, Meatloaf released his 7th studio album, Welcome to the Neighborhood. The album went platinum in the United States and the United Kingdom. It included 3 singles that hit the top 40, including I'd Lie for You and That's the Truth, which reached number 13 in the United States and number 2 in the UK, and Not a Dry Eye in the House, which reached number 7 in the UK chart. In 1998, Meatloaf released The Very Best of Meatloaf. The album featured 3 new songs co-written by Steinman, 2 with Andrew Lloyd Webber, and 1 with Don Black. In 2003, Meatloaf released his album Couldn't Have Said It Better. For only the 3rd time in his career, Meatloaf released an album without any songs written by Steinman, not counting live bonus tracks on special edition releases. Although Meatloaf claimed that Couldn't Have Said It Better was the most perfect album he did since Bat Out of Hell, it was not as commercially successful. The album was a minor commercial success worldwide and reached number 4 on the UK album chart, accompanied by a sellout world tour to promote the album and some of Meatloaf's best-selling singles. On November 17, 2003, during a performance at London's Wembley Arena on his Couldn't Have Said It Better tour, he collapsed of what was later diagnosed as Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, a condition marked by an extra electrical pathway in the heart, which causes symptoms like a rapid heartbeat. The following week, he underwent a surgical procedure intended to correct the problem. As a result, Meatloaf's insurance agency did not allow him to perform for any longer than 1 hour and 45 minutes. From February 20 to 22, 2004, during an Australian tour, Meatloaf performed with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra in a set of concerts recorded for the album Bat Out of Hell, live with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. Meatloaf and Steinman had begun to work on the 3rd installment of Bat Out of Hell when Steinman suffered a heart attack. According to Meatloaf, Steinman was too ill to work on such an intense project, while Stillman's manager said health was not an issue. Steinman had registered the phrase "Bat Out of Hell" as a trademark in 1995. In May 2006, Meatloaf sued Steinman and his manager in federal district court in Los Angeles, seeking $50 million and an injunction against Steinman's use of the phrase. Steinman and his representatives attempted to block the album's release. An agreement was reached in July 2006. Denying reports in the press over the years of a rift between Meatloaf and Steinman, in an interview with Dan Rather, Meatloaf said that he and Steinman never stopped talking, and that the lawsuits reported in the press were between lawyers and managers, and not between Meatloaf and Steinman. The album Bat Out of Hell 3, The Monster Is Loose, was released on October 31st, 2006, and was produced by Desmond Child. The first single from the album, It's All Coming Back to Me Now, featuring Marion Raven, was released on October 16, 2006. It entered the UK singles chart at number 6, giving Meatloaf his highest UK chart position in nearly 11 years. The album debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 and sold 81,000 copies in its opening week, but after that did not sell as well in the United States and yielded no hit singles, although it was certified gold. The album also featured duets with Patty Russo and Jennifer Hudson. In the weeks following the release of Bat 3, Meatloaf and the Neverland Express did a brief tour of the United States and Europe, known as the Bases Are Loaded Tour. In 2007, Meatloaf began the Seize the Night tour, with Marion Raven serving as a supporting act. Portions of the tour in February 2007 were featured in the documentary Meatloaf, In Search of Paradise, directed by Bruce David Klein. In May 2009, Meatloaf began work on the album Hang Cool Teddy Bear in the studio with Green Day's American Idiot album producer Rob Cavallo. Hugh Laurie and Jack Black both perform on the album. Laurie plays piano on the song If I Can't Have You, while Black sings a duet with Meatloaf on Like a Rose. Patty Russo and Cara DioGuardi also duet on the album. Brian May of Queen featured on guitar along with Steve Vai. In a February 2020 Facebook post, Meatloaf announced his intention to record a new album containing 4 or 5 new tracks, including Steinman's What Part of My Body Hurts the Most, a song long requested by fans but previously under contract restrictions for the Bat Out of Hell musical, along with the original 1975 demo recordings made for the Bat Out of Hell album. Meatloaf's longtime collaborator, Jim Steinman, died on April 19, 2021 of kidney failure. In December 1978, Meatloaf went to work with Steinman in Woodstock, New York, where his future wife, Leslie G. Edmonds, was working as a secretary at Bearsfield Studios. They were married in early 1979. From a previous marriage, Leslie had a daughter named Pearl. Meatloaf adopted Pearl in 1979, and her last name was changed to Aday. In 1981, Leslie gave birth to Amanda Aday, later a television actress. Meatloaf and Leslie divorced in 2001. He married Deborah Gillespie in 2007. Now, sadly, Meatloaf passed away on January 20th, 2022. Okay, that's the end of our video. I sure hope you enjoyed it. If you like this type of video and want us to keep producing them, please like and subscribe. And as always, thank you very much for watching.